Today, we are talking about IRS Form 4564 Information Document Request. We just call it an IDR for short. Who am I and why should you listen to me? Again, I'm Brad Paladini, a tax attorney with about 13 years of experience helping people across the United States handle IRS audits and specifically responding to this Form 4564. So what is an IRS Form 4564? Again, as we refer to it, an IDR. It is an information document request. It comes up during an audit where the IRS is requesting specific documents and records related to your tax return. So during the course of an IRS audit, you may see one or multiple IDRs depending on the scope and complexity. These are typically issued by the IRS revenue agent or auditor that's assigned to your case. It could also be issued by a tax compliance officer if this is more of a correspondence audit rather than a field or office audit. So what kind of documents can the IRS request? While it's not a fishing expedition, the IRS has pretty broad power to request information. So some of the more common ones are bank statements, canceled checks, receipts for deductions, mileage logs, 1099s, W-2s, lease agreements, profit and loss statements, maybe a balance sheet. They may also ask for corporate minutes. If you're self-employed, they may want proof of income. My personal favorite is when the IDR includes a copy of the tax return. You would think, hey, you're the IRS. You can just pull up a copy of the 1040 or 1120 pretty easily. But no, oftentimes it is somewhat difficult for the revenue agent to get an actual readable copy of the tax return, and so they will ask you for it. So what are they doing with this information? They're basically trying to verify that the income and expenses were reported properly. So how should you respond to an IDR if you get one? You want to make sure that you are responding specifically to the request in the IDR and not giving them more information than what they asked for. So if we are focused on a 2022 audit and they are requesting information from 2020, you want to ask why they are requesting that information. Now, sometimes things carry over from one year to another, but most of the time, the documents should be specific to the issues on the tax return that they're auditing. And those are the things that you want to respond to. Make sure that you respond timely. They usually give you about 10 to 15 days. If you can't get everything together within that time, just talk to the revenue agent and request additional time. Again, we only want to provide what's requested. So if they're asking for 12 months of bank statements, you probably don't want to provide 24 months, right? You want to just be responsive to their request and not volunteer extra information. When you're providing the documents, try to organize it as reasonable and as easily as you can. Use labels, use cover sheets. When we are handling an audit for a client, let's say they're auditing the marketing expense, we'll have the one-page letter showing if they deducted $50,000 in marketing, here are all of the individual specific transactions adding up to that $50,000. And then in chronological order behind that, we will put the receipts that show that they actually paid the $50,000 in the marketing expenses. Don't go in there with a shoebox of information with everything just mixed together. IRS isn't going to spend the time in going through it. They're not going to do the work for you. And at the end of the day, they don't give much reason to disallow the expenses. So make it as easy for them as possible. What happens if you ignore it or you don't provide a complete response? If you blow off the request, the IRS could issue a summons for records. So for things like bank statements, the IRS can go straight to the bank and request the information from them. This can also happen with like casinos. If they want a win-loss statement from you and you're refusing to provide it or refusing to provide copies of your W-2Gs, they could get that information from the casino. So you want to voluntarily provide the information that the IRS has the ability to get anyway. There's no sense in kind of ticking off the auditor and playing games by not providing bank statements that they can get very easily. If you don't have the documentation for some of the expenses, you want to do the best you can to show that it was actually paid and it was business related. Very few audits that I've done over the years, everybody has all of the receipts, but if you could at least show a handful of receipts for a specific category with a good sample of the vendors that you are paying, so the IRS gets an idea as to what you're actually taking as a deduction and can verify that it was ordinary and necessary. If you have absolutely no documentation, you could lose the deductions that you took on the return, and that would lead to additional taxes and penalties. So some common mistakes to avoid when responding to an IDR. Again, giving them too much information. You don't want to do a document dump. Bring in 42 bankers boxes of information, 99% of which is irrelevant. You don't want to make the documents unorganized. You want to make it neat and tidy for them. Of course, you don't want to just not respond, because if you don't respond, the IRS will just disallow all of the deductions on the return and make whatever adjustments they really feel like. Always remember that auditors are human, but they are trained to look for red flags. So don't think you're going to outsmart them. I've seen that end very badly for taxpayers when they're doing it on their own. If the IRS sent you a 4564 IDR, consider hiring representation. Not every case will need representation, but at the very least, you could reach out to someone, get a consultation, and see if it's something that you do need help with. If this video is enjoyable, please take a moment to like and subscribe. And if you need help with your 4564 IDR, click on the link below and schedule a consultation with our office.